Hey everyone, so as you may know, the Poseidon Redwood and the X both come in a drop bar and a flat bar option. But what you may not know is that it's actually really easy to convert from one to the other, or vice versa, with a few basic parts and a few basic tools. In this video, I'll be converting this drop bar Redwood to a flat bar version. Now, why would I want to do that? I actually don't really have a good answer for that, other than it's really easy to do, and I kind of just want to see what it feels like. So what you're going to need is basically a flat handlebar. This one I got off Amazon for like 25 bucks. What you do want to get is 31.8 millimeter clamp diameter, because that's what the stock drop bar stem uses. You're also going to need some mountain bike style grips. Now, these are just cheapo lock-on grips that were a takeoff from another one of my bikes. You're going to need a new mountain bike style shifter. Now, what's nice about the Poseidon bikes is that they use the Advent X 1x10 drivetrain, which is compatible with either these drop bar shifters or the relatively cheap Advent X mountain bike style shifter. So I got this one on Amazon for like 30 bucks. And then lastly, you're gonna need some mountain bike style brake levers. These are the FR5s, and for the pair, I think they're like $12. I got them on Amazon. All these parts I'll put links down in the description if you want to check them out. Now, the thing that you want to consider is that the stock mechanical brakes are short pull brakes. So regardless of whatever mountain bike style brake levers you choose, you just want to make sure that they're short pull levers so that they'll be directly compatible with the stock brakes. So since we are going to reuse the stock housing, we do need to untape everything and pull everything off the handlebar so we can expose that housing. Just cut the top layer here, a razor blade, carefully, and that will allow you to start unrolling the bar tape. When you get to the hoods, you just want to peel back the hoods like so, which will allow you to get all the way under. This is not the stock bar tape. I think this is the bar tape that Mark Cycling sent over. It's actually pretty good tape. It's meant to replicate one of the Supercast tape. Okay, so then what you want to do is to actually loosen all the pinch bolts, and you'll be able to pull those inner cables all the way through. So for the brake cables, it's best to cut these pieces of tape, and that will allow you to actually pull the brake cable through. The brake cables are out, we have to pull out the derailleur cable. It's best if you have the derailleur in the smallest cog, so where there's the least amount of tension, because you'll see if you squeeze the lever a little bit, you can see that the shift cable head actually pops right out if it's in the smallest cog. And so you can grab that cable head and just pull that all the way through, like so. So at this point, there are no more cables attached to the handlebars. You can pull out all the housings and just remove the handlebar. The handlebar comes off, and you can put whatever handlebar you want in its place. Go ahead and install your handlebar. This is a real key here. Let's try and get these all started without dropping any of the screws. There we go. So we got a handlebar on. It's looking pretty cool already. I don't know, I like it. It's interesting. It's kind of like dad bike, but you know, I'm a dad. What do you want? Next, we can throw on the shifter. So this is the Microshift Advent X mountain style shifter, 10 speed. Comes with the shift cable installed, so we're just going to use that. Sometimes there's a little kink in it from the box. You want to straighten that out as best as possible. Barrel adjuster is usually somewhere in the middle. I like to thread the barrel adjuster all the way in and then back it out, maybe like a full turn or a full turn and a half, just to give me a kind of a good starting point. Just roughly kind of cinch it in place. I always lube up inner cables before I feed them through housings. So this is just some rock and roll gold chain lube. I'll just kind of drip it down the inner cable, and some of it will drip, but most of it will kind of ride down the inner cable. It'll give you a nice slick surface all the way through. I'm not even going to bother to cut the housings, because if I want to ever change back to the drop bar housings, I'll know that I have the right length. And I think this is going to look fine as is. Okay, so we're going to feed the inner cable through the derailleur housing. Pull that through, like so. Now at the back end here, I'm just going to feed the inner cable through. Try and pull it as tight as you can. We're going to have to probably make a couple of adjustments on the cable tension, but for starters, I'm just going to try and pull the cable as tight as I can while tightening down the pinch bolt. You don't have to crank down like crazy, but you want to make sure that the cable doesn't slip out, like so. So up next would be brake levers. Now these are the Avid FR5s, just your basic mountain bike 2-finger lever. One thing to note is that there is a slight difference. So this right here is a mountain style cable head, and then this right here is kind of the road style head. It's kind of like a dome shape. Okay, so again, I'm gonna lube up the cable, make sure it's nice and slick. I don't know if this does anything. It's just a habit of mine. I've been doing this forever. It seems to make the brakes as frictionless as possible, so may as well do it. Oh shoot, one other thing you might want to consider is to get the proper ferrule onto the end of the housing. Basically look like this. They're just sort of like end caps for the housing, and they're metal, so they give like a nice firm surface to push up against. You know, these usually come with brake cable sets, or you know, they're a dime a dozen if you order them online. Push the ferrule over the edge of the housing, and that will fit very nicely into the brake lever itself. Okay, so right now we're ready to feed the brake cable through. Now before we cinch down the cable at the caliper, you do want to get the cable head inserted into the brake lever. So what's nice about these is that it can be done with the cable already installed in the housing. If you open up the lever, you'll find this little slot where that head slides into, and then the entire lever housing is slotted. And if you line up the barrel adjuster and the lock nut, those are also slotted. And so the whole cable just kind of fits right in there. Once it's in there, you can give it a little, maybe pull the barrel adjuster out maybe 1 or 2 revolutions and tighten the nut down. And then put the housing into the brake lever. Now we're ready to cinch down the cable at the back. Try and pull some of the slack out. And actually a little trick here is to pull the cable, and also while you're tightening the caliper lock nut, you can give it a little bit of a forward bias, so that you kind of pull some of that slack out of the system as you tie it down. It's slight, it's subtle. But ultimately, the idea is that all these cables are going to stretch out when you first start riding them, so you want to try and pre-stretch them as much as possible so that you don't have to readjust your brakes or your shifting on your first or second ride. Ooh, that's got a nice lever feel. That's because of the compressionless housing that I installed, which I have a whole other video about if you want to check that out. Okay, then we're just going to repeat that whole process for the front brake, and that's basically it. At this point, you just got to install your grips of choice. Pretty basic, but they'll do the job. The grips on, you can then kind of line up the levers how you like. I'm just going to cinch them into place. Alright, there we have it. Then we just want to adjust our derailleur to make sure our shifting is all set. Best thing to do here is to give the shifter a couple of upshifts without pedaling. And what that's going to do is it's going to pre-stretch the cable. So I'm not pedaling, but I shift it up. That's putting a lot of strain through this cable, which is pre-stretching it. And now when I go to shift back down, this cable is actually all loose again. See, so that's what we call pre-stretching the cables. Probably I'm going to have to pull that slack back out from the pinch bolt, but let's just take a look. Yeah, so it's a little bit under tension. I don't know, it's a little bit close. I'm going to see if I can get away with it at the barrel. If you end up backing the barrel out more than 2 or 3 turns, it's probably best to take the slack out at the pinch bolt, but I'm going to see what I can get away with here. Holy crap, not too bad. Okay, so I'm just going to leave the tension as it is here. Now for the brakes, you can also try and pre-stretch just by giving the levers a really tight squeeze, which is going to pre-stretch that brake cable. So I do the same thing to the front. It's a little bit tighter than the right, so I'll bring that barrel adjuster in about a turn. Oh yeah, nice and even. And an even lever pull. Wow, that has a really nice feel. I swear, compressionless housing is the best upgrade you can make to these stock mechanical disc brakes on the Poseidon. Let's get some cable ends on these cables. I think that'll basically be it. It should be rolled forward a little bit, so. Oh man, and we are done. Look at that. It's a dad bike. Alright, well there you have it. A relatively quick and a relatively cheap way to convert your drop bar Poseidon Redwood or X from drop bar to flat bar. Now, why you would do this? Again, it's just preference. Bike ride's totally different now. It's a little bit more relaxed. You're sitting a little bit more upright. It's definitely leaning towards a mountain bike now. You have a lot more control over the handlebars. You have a lot more power through the brakes, I would argue. The stock stem could be a little bit longer. With the flat bars, it really shortens up the effective reach. But, you know, for a total of, what was it, 60 or 65 bucks worth of parts, it's hard to complain. I can always add a longer stem later. So there you go. If you're on the fence about whether to get the Poseidon Redwood or the X in either drop bar or flat bar, it doesn't actually matter the type of handlebar that you get. Turns out you can actually swap back and forth pretty easily and for relatively little money. Now, like I said, if you do buy the flat bar version of either the X or the Redwood, it will cost you a little bit more to convert to drop bar because you've got to buy those Advent X drop bar shifters, which tend to be a little bit more expensive. And honestly, that's why the drop bar versions of the X and the Redwood cost a little bit more. The bike is pretty much identical otherwise. Okay, so that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and thanks again for subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.